guys, my name is Maddie, or Books with Maddie, and today I'm showing you the best books I read in 2020. So today I'm showing you my favorite books that I read last year in 2020, and I felt really weird about the reading I did last year. I feel like I didn't have a clear top 10 or anything like that. I feel like I didn't even have a clear favorite book of last year, and in 2019 it was super weird because I had definite top 5. I was struggling between two books that would be the best book of the year, and that didn't happen this year. I feel like I didn't have, or last year, sorry, I feel like I didn't have a clear winner for my best book of 2020, which was slightly disappointing. But I feel like sometimes in the aftershock of the year you realize what the best books you read of the year were. So this is my list right now, but you know, it is kind of subject to change because there were a lot of books that I really tried to fit on this list, but they didn't quite make it, stuff like that. So I do have a top 10, and then I have some runners up that I'll talk about, and these I'm gonna say in no particular order because I really didn't have a favorite book of the year or a second favorite book. I didn't really have that. So I'm gonna say them in a general order, but they really could interchange quite a bit. But with that said, I will just show you my top books of 2020. Okay, starting off, this was definitely a shock to me because it's from a genre that I typically don't read from, and that is thrillers. So coming in at number 10, I'm saying number 10, but really this could go in any order, is The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides. I'm sorry, I don't really know how to pronounce his last name. I was totally blown away by this book. I've heard mixed reviews. It seemed like people who read a lot of thrillers didn't enjoy this book as much as people who don't read thrillers as often. I'm definitely a person who doesn't read thrillers that often, so this was pure gold to me. I seriously love this book. I think I read it in one night. And I've heard a lot of people say things they don't enjoy the narrator because he is a really unlikable character, and I found it really interesting that I enjoyed that because I typically don't enjoy a book when it has unlikable characters, and that's a totally me thing because I think it's really cool when authors write unlikable characters. But that was something that I found really interesting about this book, was the narrator was just really intriguing and super polarizing, I feel like. And the ending of this book absolutely blew my mind. I finished at 3 in the morning and I had to read the last 10 pages over and over to understand what was going on. But it was really, really good, and I highly recommend if you haven't picked this up yet. Should I say the synopsis? Okay, I'm gonna say a quick synopsis. So this basically follows a man named Theo, I believe his name is, and he is a criminal psychotherapist. He is really intrigued by the story of Alicia Berenson, and she reportedly killed her husband and then is now in a mental institute. She doesn't speak anymore. She hasn't spoken in years, and Theo is convinced that he can make her speak. Yeah, that is the story of The Silent Patient, and you should definitely pick it up. Okay, number 9, again, not really solid on the ratings, is Dear Martin by Nick Stone. This also is a book that totally blew me away, totally unexpected. I received this book as a gift, and Morgan and I buddy read it for the Spellbound book club, and it was so good. It carries such a huge punch for such a short book, and I feel like it's so underrated. I feel like compared to books like The Hate You Give, this kind of flies under the radar, I feel like. And I personally, I'm terrified to say this, I did enjoy this a little bit more than The Hate You Give. I read both this year, and I did enjoy this slightly more, but I think both are equally incredible and equally necessary to be read. I think I read this maybe a month or two after everything with the murder of George Floyd, and it just carried such a huge punch reading that when everything was going on, and it's so necessary to still be reading content that carries that punch and tells the stories of racial injustice and institutionalized racism and things like that. So this is definitely a must read, and I really, really enjoyed it. Okay, number 8, another shock to me. The really interesting thing I feel about probably 6 or 7 out of 10 of these books are, I went into them not thinking I would really enjoy them as much as I did, and then I came out absolutely loving them. So the next one is a book that I have owned for quite a while, since the day it came out, and it was one of my most highly anticipated reads of 2019, and I didn't end up reading it because I was too scared. And that is Rebel by Marie Lu. So if you're not aware, Legend is the best series ever. It is just actual amazing literature. It's just so good, and it goes such a bad rep, I feel like, because people categorize it in the same category as like Shatter Me and like Divergent and all those other, The Darkest Mind, all those other series that came out around the same time as like the Hunger Games when that was like the whole fad. No, Legend is different and superior to all of them. It's so good. If you haven't read Legend yet, you have to. But if you have, then you know that Champion was one of the most destructive books that has ever been written. And when Marie Lu announced that she was coming out with a sequel to Champion, which would kind of tie up the whole story, I was absolutely sold the second it came out. She had already taken all of my money, but I was super scared to read it because Marie Lu is a very sneaky lady and she can destroy me with her words very easily. So I was very nervous to read this, but it ended up being literally incredible, and I feel like nobody has like talking about this that much. Like, I don't know if I've ever heard anybody on BookTube talk about it, but I am really behind on BookTube videos, so it's possible, but it's just, like, why is everybody not absolutely jumping to read this immediately? It's so good. And, like, I have heard people say, like, the chapters with Eden, who is Day's little brother, like, go a little bit slowly, and I will admit that's slightly true, but regardless, the overall literary merit of this masterpiece outweighs any slightly slow parts that exist. It is so good. If you are still emotionally wrecked from Champion, you must read this. I promise you, it will be better than anything you could possibly expect. I feel like I put a lot of weight on this book, but it's so good and I highly, highly recommend it. Okay, coming in next. What number are we at? 6? 7? Take a Hint, Danny Round by Talia Hibbert. Talia Hibbert has quickly become one of my favorite authors of all time. She writes such diverse and realistic characters that are absolutely amazing, and she also wrote Get a Life, Chloe Brown. That was the first book in the Brown Sisters trilogy, but you can honestly read them in any order, I'm pretty sure, although I don't think the third one is out yet. I slightly enjoyed Take a Hint, Danny Brown a little bit more than Get a Life, Chloe Brown, although Get a Life, Chloe Brown holds a special place in my heart because Chloe Brown actually has fibromyalgia. I also have fibromyalgia, and I made a little video about how realistic the fibromyalgia rep was in that book, so if you'd like to check that out, I will have it in the card. Take a Hint, Danny Brown was absolutely incredible. It follows, have I been giving a synopsis? No, this is inconsistent, as always. It follows Danny Brown, who is, I believe, getting her PhD in Women and Gender Studies, which is what I'm studying in school, so it was like so cool to hear her talk about some of the writers and authors and speakers that I learned about in some of my classes, and she was just such a cool character. I don't know if it was ever exactly said what she is struggling with in the book, but it sounds a little bit like relationship anxiety. It also has a lot of commentary on grief and loss and things like that from Zaf's perspective, who is the love interest in the book, and it was just like so excellent. It was absolutely incredible, and if you're looking for a realistic romance, then I would highly recommend you pick this up. Okay, number 6, I think, but also in no particular order, we have Our Dark Duet by Victoria Schwab, another absolute shocker for me. So I read This Savage Song and Our Dark Duet months ago. I don't even remember when, but This Savage Song took me like 3 months to get through. I could not get into it. I was like, what is this hype about Victoria Schwab? I don't like this book. I put it down for a while. I was like probably 30% through with it, and I was like, I literally can't deal with this book anymore. It is so incredibly boring. I then was like, okay, I don't DNF books because I have problems, so I'm going to go back to it with an audiobook this time. And so I read and listened at the same time, and it pushed me to like 50%, and after 50% it became literally incredible, and I can't, like, I want to reread it now because I don't know what I was talking about with the first stuff. Like, it probably wasn't as bad. I was probably just like sometimes I feel like your life affects like your reading taste and stuff like that, so I was probably just like not in the mood to be reading that, but it was absolutely incredible and I loved it so much. Then guess what, you get to read this absolutely amazing sequel, Our Dark Duet, which was an absolute banger of a book. If you're not aware of the like storyline for The Savage Song and Our Dark Duet, it basically follows 2 characters, August and Kate. Okay, basically, I'm so bad at stuff, but basically the world is divided into like 2 sectors, or the country, wherever they live. They live in a place called like Verity, I think, and there's 2 sections. One is run by Kate's father, and the other is run by August's father. And I say father because they aren't actually biologically related. There's like monsters that are born out of evil and crime and things like that. But the type of monster depends on the type of crime. So, or the type of horror, the type of violence, I guess would be the word. And when there's like a huge traumatic, like very violent event, there is like this very specific type of monster that is born who is like nearly human but slightly different, and that is what August is. So he's like a monster, but he's basically human, but he's not. So August and Kate aren't enemies, but they end up running into each other and becoming friends and just absolutely killing it. And it's so good, and I don't know how else to describe it. Also, a really cool aspect of this book is that music is actually the thing that counters the monsters and the evil and the violence. So like August uses a violin to like counter the evil. I can't remember exactly how that works. It's been a while. I need to reread these, but yeah. So this is such a good book, and I loved it even more because Victoria Schwab switches between, and I'm such a fan of this, switches between prose, so like regular writing, and like this poetry, lyrical, amazing, I just, it's so good. And the ending is absolutely just I will never be over the ending of this series. Like, if you haven't read it, just please do it, like, for your own sake. Also, another really good selling point for this book is a lot of people ask for recommendations of books that don't have, like, a focus on romance or even pretty much any romance at all, and this duology has, like, basically none. So if you're looking for something like that, this is a duology that I recommend to you. I will do Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid next. So this is what, number 5? I don't even know. This is probably higher than number 5, but I continually forget about this book because I read it in January, I think, and I always forget how good it is. I don't think it was quite as good as The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, which is another book by Taylor Jenkins Reid, which is one of my absolute all-time favorites, but this was definitely incredible. It follows the band Daisy Jones and the Six, which is like not a real band, but you know, in this fictional world they were. It's not a fictional world, it's our world, but like it's fictional because this didn't actually happen. I don't know what you call that. Historical fiction. Okay. So it follows the main character, Daisy Jones, and then the other members of the band. It takes place in the 1970s. They write these huge, like, worldwide platinum good music. What do you call that? Like, best-selling music. People love music. People love them. Like, they're really big. Like, okay. Do you know what I'm trying to say? I feel like you've picked up what I'm trying to say. And it follows the band up to their breakup in their Chicago show. No one knows the reason behind the group's split on the night of their final concert at Chicago Stadium on July 12th, 1979 until now. So it kind of reveals what happened, but but the writing, the way it's written, is in the form of like it almost looks like a play script, but it's like an audio recording. So it's like they're being interviewed and they're like responding. And now that I'm talking about this, I'm realizing how much I absolutely adored this book. I really need to reread it. I'm trying to like describe this better. It's like written as oral history. Okay, so that's the word I'm looking for, I think. Taylor Jenkins Reid is one of my all-time favorite authors ever, so I highly recommend this and all of the other books she has written. Okay, so next I'm going to be talking about Language of Thorns by Leigh Bardugo. Another absolute shock to me that this was as good as it was, because I feel like this book, out of all of Leigh Bardugo's books, goes under the radar. I don't know if I've ever heard anybody else talk about this book. So basically what this is it takes place in the Grishaverse, but it's like Midnight Tales and Dangerous Magic. So it's like little short stories and like legends and stuff like that. Like it has the air of like a story that you would tell a child, like a bedtime story or like a fable. There's like a word I'm looking for and I can't remember what it is, but it has kind of the air of the words that I was saying. So there's, I believe, 4 to 6. There are 6 stories in here, and they each take place in a different nation. Is that the word I'm looking for? Like, you know how there's like Kerch, there's Ravkin, there's Fjerdan, yeah, so like the first one takes place is like Zemini, the next three are Ravkin. I don't know if I'm saying these words correctly, by the way, so the fifth one is Kirch, and then the last one is Fjerdan. So that's really cool. And then also, though, there was just absolute incredible artwork in here, and I didn't realize this until I read it, but each page that goes by, it builds. So like it starts as this, and then like as it goes on, it builds. And I won't spoil like all of the drawings for you and stuff. This is just from the first story, but it does that for every single chapter, and it was absolutely incredible. And so totally underrated. Highly recommend if you love the Grishers, if you love Six of Crows. Absolutely incredible. I love these stories, and it helps me realize like why I love Leigh Bardugo so much. Like there are so many like incredible writers out there, but some of them just absolutely fail at being storytellers, to be honest. And Leigh Bardugo is just a born storyteller. It was like there was such agency to these stories. It was like they needed to be told. It was like they had already existed, whether or not Leigh Bardugo wrote them, and she just put them into words. Like that's the best way I can describe it. That's really dramatic, honestly, but that's just like how I feel about these stories. Like they were just absolutely perfect, and I loved them. So if you haven't read this yet, please pick it up, do yourself a favor, and read it. Also, it's just beautiful. It's just really good looking, you know? So you can have also a pretty book on your shelf. 2 for 1. Good book, good looking at. What? I say words sometimes, and even I don't know what they mean. Next up, we have Beach Read by Emily Henry. Now, I expected to like this book, so it wasn't quite a shock, but I didn't expect to like it as much as I did, because it's a romance, and like I appreciate a good romance now and then, but it never really makes it to like my top 10, I feel like, although last year Josh and Hazel made it to my top 10, so who knows what I'm saying. But this basically follows 2 characters, Augustus / Gus, and January, which they both have month names, almost. That's crazy also. They're both writers, authors, people. I'm getting more and more unable to speak as this video goes on, so just bear with me. He writes like dark literary fiction, she writes happy ending romances, and they end up meeting on they own like beach houses. I think her father dies, that's not a spoiler, and he owned this beach house, and she's now staying in the beach house because she's like has to clean it out and stuff, and then he lives in a beach house, and I feel like it takes place in Michigan or Maine. I don't remember which one. They end up meeting, and they both kind of have critiques on each other's writing, and so they decide to swap. So Augustus will write happy ending romance, and January will try to write literary fiction, and in order to do like research for each other's like books, they go on like these little trips. So like January shows Augustus some of the things that he could include in his book by going like, they go to like a dance or something, they like, I don't remember what else they do, and then he wants to show her some of the elements that she could put into her literary fiction. So they go to like a murder scene or something. That's not what it is. It's like the site of a murder scene from years ago. It's not like an active murder scene, but they're like, oh, okay, we're gonna do that, but we definitely won't fall in love. And do they? The answer is yes. It's not a spoiler. You knew that was gonna happen. And it was great. It was so realistic. Like, that's the part I loved about it. I hate when romances are like, oh my gosh, we met eyes and then we fell in love. I hate that. That never happens, ever. So this was just very realistic. They struggled. They fought. They misunderstood each other, which was annoying because I hate when miscommunication is a trope in a book, but it was not actually that bad. It was very good, and I highly recommend it, that you read it. Okay, so Gillian Flynn, nope, the title is not Gillian Flynn. I literally just read okay. Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn. Absolute banger. You've probably already read it. I know I'm really far behind, but if you haven't, this is a thriller about a woman, a girl, you might say, who goes gone. Oh my gosh. She goes missing, is basically what I'm trying to say, and her husband is like trying to find her, and it switches between her husband's perspective and her diary. So the things that she wrote in her diary, which give you kind of clues about what's happening, and there's absolute plot twists, there is intrigue, there is murder. Actually, I don't know if there's murder. Is there murder? I don't remember. The ending was perfect. Perfect. It was perfect. I can't emphasize to you how perfect the ending of this book was. If you haven't read it yet, please do it. So this is coming from somebody who doesn't really like thrillers. This was incredible. So if you're a person who's like, oh, I only like fantasy, oh, I only like this, oh, I only like that, do it anyway. Okay, And then the final book is, no one is surprised because I talk about this book all the time, but Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. I don't feel like I don't need to do a synopsis about this book. It's a classic. I read it for my women in literature class. It was absolutely incredible. I feel like I've said that for every single book. I feel like I've said the word absolutely incredible for every single book that I've talked about. But you know what? They're all absolutely incredible, so I regret nothing. But I read this, like I said, for my women in literature class, and I absolutely loved it. Do I just say the word absolutely a lot? Maybe. If you haven't read it, if you're looking for a classic to get you into classics or just the classic to read, and you haven't read Jane Eyre yet, highly recommend. The beginning is a little bit slow, I will warn you of that, but overall this is just such an incredible book, and if you can, I would try to like read some kind of like analysis along with it, because there are so many hidden things within the text that I definitely wouldn't have picked up on if I wasn't taking a class about it at the same time. I can do a video on it if you want and talk about all of the little Easter eggs. They're not Easter eggs, what do you call them? Like little just hidden fun things inside of the book. If you'd like, I would really enjoy doing that, so let me know if you'd like to see that. But yeah, so I think this is probably my favorite book of the year, although I don't know, there are a lot of good ones this year. Yeah, wow. I'm gonna quickly go over some runners up because I feel really bad not mentioning these books because they were very good, and I feel like I was just like really critical of them, and I'll show you why in a second. So the 3 runners up for being on my top 10 are all historical fiction, and I felt really bad not including these in the list because I do love historical fiction. It's my favorite genre. When I read historical fiction, it usually makes it to the top 10 of my list, but these 3 books were really good and I really enjoyed them, but they didn't quite make it, and I have a couple reasons why. So I'm very critical of historical fiction that I read because I know what I like, I know what I think is good. I feel like I have a really good understanding more than any other genre of what I'm looking for in historical fiction and what makes a really intriguing historical fiction novel, and so I feel like things that I wouldn't, you know, critique as much in fantasy or romance or contemporary, I critique more in historical fiction just because, you know, I'm always looking for like the perfect historical fiction, which like maybe isn't fair of me because, you know, I don't expect books to be perfect, but these 3, I feel like I liked 95% of them, and there was just like 5% which I felt so strongly about that I couldn't give them 5 stars or I couldn't put them on the top 10, but I loved these 3 books so much. And the first one is The Summer Before the War by Helen Simonson, which was probably one of my favorite books of the year and was really close to making it on the top 10. But this is a book, takes place in 1914 in East Sussex, and it is about the summer before World War I. It is a really good like found family book, and it's very like relaxing to read. It is a little bit slow paced, which is why of course I couldn't put it on the top 10 because that was like my one thing about it. I've heard mixed reviews about it. Some people find it too slow, but I just found it so peaceful to read. I feel like normal stories go like this, but I felt like this one was kind of like this. I can never find the word that I'm trying to use. It was just like steady. It was just like I was living the life of the narrative. And I love books like that just feel like you're living somebody's life. Like it's not too dramatic. It's not like, oh, there's like an agenda. It's just like, no, you're living this person's life. This is what happened. And so I really liked that about this book. Next is Salt to the Sea by Brutus Petties, which was an absolute masterpiece, and I was hurting physically that I couldn't put this on my top 10, but the ending was just not, in my opinion, very good. I mean, I thought the closing of the book was like good, but it was just so abrupt, and I've heard that a lot about Brutus Petties' writing, and I'm pretty sure that's like purposefully done. I don't think it's like a mistake on her part. Like I think she does that on purpose, which is a literary strategy, but it's not like something that I really enjoy in books. I think that I really like conclusive endings, not really open-ended. This book was like nearly perfect. Like I loved it so much when I was reading it, and honestly like this is one of those books that I use to measure other historical fictions. Like that's how good it was. The writing was absolutely incredible, and I need to read way more of Brutus Petties like as soon as possible because this was so good. And honestly, like I could easily have swapped out any of these books and put this one in. Like this was such a good one. And then the last one is The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna, which I don't think was ever going to be in my top 10 just because the beginning, like the first like probably 40% of this book was just like very slow and I didn't really like it, but the rest of the book was phenomenal. It was so good, and I highly recommend, if you haven't read this yet, please do pick it up because I know like this is such a highly acclaimed book. Like people really love this book, and I don't want it to seem like I'm disagreeing with that because I think this book is so important and so good. And the ending absolutely destroyed me. I was crying for like a half an hour when I finished this book, and it's amazing. So I really highly recommend that you pick this up, but just be warned that the beginning is a bit slow, and I also struggled with that. I ended up getting the audiobook, and that was really helpful when I was reading it, so I recommend that strategy if you're struggling with it. This was definitely a runner-up. So I feel really bad about those three because I am a bit more critical of historical fiction. I think that's the reason they didn't make it to the top 10, but don't discount them just because they weren't in my top 10. Those three were absolutely amazing and phenomenal books, and I highly recommend all of them. So that is actually it for this video. I really hope you enjoyed. Stay tuned because tomorrow I'm uploading my least favorite books of 2020, and there's going to be some tea spilled, so keep an eye out for that. Like I said in my last two videos, I'm trying to upload every single day this week, so you'll have new content every single day, and that'll be really stressful for me, but hopefully fun for you. But yeah, I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to like and subscribe and leave a comment down below. But other than that, I hope you have a great day, I hope you have a great week, and I hope you have a great life, and I will see you very, very soon. Bye bye!